All right, there we go. Live stream to YouTube.
Awesome. What have you been up to?
Playing Magic.
Yeah, me too.
Nice.
Doing arena.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, arena is a great way to play standard.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last time I was on here. That's a while back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tried to go to like a card shop, but I played in the 90s in card shops. And when I got back into it, like last year, I started going to card shops, and it's harder to keep track of the rules. So you'll be playing with like teenagers, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, I can totally do this, and this." And like, I don't know if that's right. But they're like, "Oh yeah, I can do everything I want." And with Magic and with the game, it enforces the rules for you.
Yeah.
Hey Scott, how's it going?
Hey Scott.
Hello. How y'all doing?
It's hoodie season again.
It is indeed hoodie season.
Well, I just joined a new job. This is my third day.
Congratulations.
Senior DevOps role. So once again, I've gone from a position of I know everything to I don't know where anything is. I can't log into anything. I don't necessarily know what people are talking about. So that's fun.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, but it feels a lot earlier than it actually is here.
Well, that's because daylight savings time is nonsense.
Daylight savings time is no longer exists in Washington State.
Oh.
It just got voted away yesterday.
So what time is it?
It is 10 a.m. and it will be it will be this forever until legislature changes it back or whatever.
But I thought we were on daylight savings time. So is it just keeping daylight savings time for all times?
I think so, yeah. I think they were just like, whatever time it is now is what time it is.
Yep.
F it.
Yeah. I don't envy all the software developers out there who have to update time libraries.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I think I've told you, Joshua, the stories, the horror stories of when I worked at a certain business that had like 220 branches all around the world that were all running versions of Java on Solaris. And every time that, and I'm just going to pick one at random, let's say like Turkey changed the law around what the time zone was, or a time zone moved or something like that. A lot of countries in that area had even half hour like the lines of where the you know where it was active versus not active would change. And so we would have to do rolling updates and live patches to the JVM at like 3 o'clock in the morning to do that, since zero downtime, baby.
Yeah.
But hey,
yeah.
That's what JVMs are for, right?
Zero downtime?
Yeah, just patch them while they're going. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
Hey, Carl.
Weird Bluetooth drops out every time I try and all of my Bluetooth devices stop working as soon as I try and connect my headphones to something else. I'm trying to figure out if I can restart Bluetooth or what.
Restart everything, obviously.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Exactly. Yes. Thus destroying the entire concept of zero downtime. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. Insert joke about Linux on the desktop.
That's it. That's the joke.
Yeah, that's the joke.
So, did you see at risk of dominating the conversation, I apologize. Did you see that I tweeted something a couple of months ago that like sort of poking fun at Pulse Audio, you know, and
Yes.
and that turned into a thread of that turned into a fight.
Oh, somebody was
I
mad
was
on the internet.
Oh yeah, and I was like, I was just kind of fooling. I'm just playing with y'all's like whatever you want to do. And I think the inventor of one of the other sound drivers or like original author of it, like got on the thread and was like, yeah, people were getting frosty, and I eventually just muted the thread and walked away. And I was like, I was just kidding. Bye.
Sometimes it seems like it's a smaller world than it actually is. It should be.
Yeah.
This is true.
Can confirm.
Yeah, when I worked at Graylog, I was using a Linux laptop, and I got this external webcam that I'm using now. It's USB, and it kept like switching audio. Zoom would switch audio randomly, so I joined a Zoom meeting, and like randomly half the time the audio just wouldn't work, or it would flip between my headset mic and my webcam mic, which I never want to use. It's just that was the one problem I never solved. Now that I'm back on Windows, it's actually working properly. I'm going to blame all.
Oh, you muted.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to blame all that on Pulse Audio, even though it's probably just Zoom's fault. Because I think it only broke in Zoom. If I use Slack, like the Slack Meet thing, it always worked.
Oh yeah, speaking for folks that I on teams with, Zoom is, let's just say, it doesn't. I don't feel like it gets as much love on Linux as it gets on other operating systems.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
What else is new?
yeah.
But it was great running Linux anyway, like in other areas, because I've used Bash for like 25 years and I know it backwards and forwards. It's nice to have it just part of the OS.
Slack, the Slack Hangouts actually works really, really, really well across all the different platforms I use, which is surprising because supposedly it's built on Chime,
I don't even know what Chime is.
AWS service. It's what AWS uses for in place of Zoom, because they couldn't just use Zoom; they have to make their own.
I mean, it's Amazon. They're like the epitome of not invented here.
So in your various places you've worked, when you join a Zoom meeting, what percentage of people have the video camera enabled versus just you staring at their initials?
Oh, we don't use video at all at my work, ever. My company is older though than video chat.
Yeah.
So, like back in the old days, they actually used to have their meetings via phone call. And they would join a conference bridge.
I remember that too. Like at the last place I worked, it was a very like open source company. So everyone used video chat, which was really nice because I could see their reactions and it's like easier to work remotely when you get that extra layer of communication. But I've worked other jobs like my current one. It seems like it's not nearly as common.
I personally, I'm glad that we're not on video all the time. And it's really difficult to kind of like when working from home, and I mean I'm working 10 hours a day right now because my time is split so much. And it's really difficult to just to like maintain like wonderful appearance. Like I just shaved for the first time in 2 weeks, and that's so we have a lot of not traditionally in tech people at my company too. So a lot of underrepresented minorities and other people that you typically don't find in a white male dominated environment. Donald, were there birds flying around behind you?
Maybe. Oh my god. Yeah, I converted a shed in my backyard into an office. I got it insulated and painted and stuff. And so instead of having like a window, I just have the door open to the outside. And actually,
Okay.
I just looked out and there literally was a bird like on my doorstep. So maybe
it landed on the picture behind you, behind your left shoulder, like right on the edge of the frame, and then flew behind you.
That is why I
Amazing.
usually shut the door when I leave.
I like this very much.
Freya would like that too.
Yeah, she's all about the
Birds.
all about the birds.
I
Yeah.
can maybe I
She
can
just
check the
let you
video
know.
later. I'll check the video later and see it.
But yeah, so it's really nice to not have the pressure to be on video because I can, not shave for 2 weeks, because why would I leave the home?
Right.
Oh, I'm shaving today because this is just too much. Hope, unless I decide not to, and say I'll do it tomorrow for the
Right.
5th time.
I mean, maintaining hygiene is one thing, and we've been really careful about that.
Yes.
Because otherwise, you just become less of a human. But not actually having to like be on video means that you have a little bit more freedom about your personal experience. Oh, I didn't have to use hair product today, that kind of stuff.
I just incorporate all that stuff into my routine so that my body knows that it's work time.
Yeah, I've worked from home for 13 years, and if I don't do like a morning routine, then I just don't feel like I'm at work, even though even if I'm in my office.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with that. It's part of why hygiene is part of the morning routine and everything else. Just I feel like it's not fair to some of the people that I work with if I tried to pressure them to be on video or something else.
Yeah, speaking of morning routines and stuff, I recently discovered lotion for like your face and your neck and I gotta tell you, that was a game changer for me.
You have itchy, ashy skin.
Yes, scaly is what it turns out to be.
Usually for me, that's more of a
Gross.
problem over the winter.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're in Seattle, aren't you? Shouldn't the moisture in the air kind of help you with that?
Now, kind of
You'd
dries
think,
you. It
but it
kind of
doesn't.
dries you out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I have had to go between South Texas and Colorado a lot, because a couple of my jobs were in Colorado when I was working remotely from here. So it's so dry in Denver that I would get back, like I'd spend a week there and just be completely dried out and like itchy and having to be lotion all the time. My nose is bleeding constantly. And just the feeling of when they open that airplane door up in Houston and the moist air flows in and you just kind of go, I'm reinflating again.
It's true.
It's like SpongeBob getting dried out and then going slurp.
Yep.
Hey, Neolumin. Did I say that right?
Good afternoon, Scott and everyone.
Hello.
Neolumina.
Neolumine. Nice to see you or hear. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Glad to have
glad
you
you could
here.
join.
I'm 50-50 on being on video on a recorded meeting. We'll see.
I didn't even realize you were on when I was talking about that. I was thinking about my new workplace.
Oh, was that the topic just before I joined?
Yeah, I was talking about like my old workplace, everyone used video, but in the new workplace, basically no one does unless it's a 101. I just found that like a weird culture thing.
Yeah, depending on where I've worked, it's been very different. Also, I've also, like Joshua, been working remote for almost
A minute.
10 years. I don't know, 10, 11 years. So yeah, it's some of the companies that I've worked for, it's like video is required. It's like, okay, that's a thing. There's a lot of oh, my camera's broken in that world, but yeah.
So my son just got his driver's permit a few weeks ago, and in order to get that, he took this like 4-hour driver awareness class that was conducted over Zoom, and the instructor required all of the kids to have their videos, their webcams on. And one kid's like, I don't have a webcam, I can't do this. And the instructor started going off on how this is outlined in the requirements, blah, blah, blah. And I had to go over to my other computer and get a webcam for my son to be able to use so he could be on video. And it was just this flustering fiasco of, some strange adult telling kids that they have to have video on when they didn't have the requirements because their parents set it up, and it was a mess.
That's a huge problem for kids this age because they've grown up with social media. Mm-hmm. It's caused a great deal of like social anxiety, at least from my experience. It's like there's been a huge spike in social anxiety because they're all self-conscious because social media is constantly bullying them all day. And they really are just like terrified. Like my son has, they call it like school refusal, where he started having panic attacks around the time it was time to go to school. Like he literally like starts shaking and stuff. So he has to do virtual schooling. And that's a problem. Like originally it was like he would only have panic attacks when he went to the school. And then he started having panic attacks when there had to be like video chat. So
yikes.
Yeah, that's brutal.
I couldn't imagine growing up today, all the stupid shit that I did when I was a kid. All that would be on video on YouTube and TikTok right now.
Right.
I definitely did many stupid things.
I wouldn't have had to worry about that, thankfully.
I tried to find some of that stuff because I grew up in the 80s and 90s with BBSs, and was thinking like if I could find some of those like bulletin board posts from the 80s, that would be a huge like
I found some things that I posted on the internet and I wish I could remove them. But the internet is forever.
I was going to say I feel the same, but I wonder if every generation feels that when they look at the next generation and how they're growing up.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I'm sure there were letters that people wrote to other people, and as soon as the mail person came to pick up the mail, they were like, "Oh, shouldn't have sent that." But to answer your question, Carl, the reason that I wouldn't have had that problem most likely is I lived in the woods in Alaska and my parents were poor, so I probably would not have had the opportunity to do that, and it just would have been me running around in the woods because I didn't go to school either. So
that makes total sense.
But
not everybody grew up in a suburb.
I'm a little bit of an exception to a lot of things. So
I know what that's like because my dad, my parents were divorced and my dad moved to the top of a mountain so that he could engage in his hang gliding hobby. And so whenever I would have to go to my dad's for the weekend, no electricity, no running water. And I was interested in D&D and computers. So it was, I mean, for me, it ruined my enjoyment of outside for like 20 years.
Oh yeah, I don't go outside anymore. Because yeah, like I did enough of that like when I was growing up, and I also it was the other half was like it was like 1/3 playing outside, 1/3 D&D and computers or Shadowrun or Cyberpunk 2020 or whatever RPGs, tabletop, and then a third playing guitar. So like one of those had to go. So
I used to people when I would like try to get me to go camping or they're just like outside on a hike, they go like they look around at the sky and they go and they breathe in. Isn't it great to be out here? And I'm just like, I don't understand what you're experiencing because I would have like severe allergies whenever I went outside. That's something that for some reason, like about 5 years ago, all my allergy symptoms just stopped. And now I like being outside, which is really weird. But before that, I just didn't get it because my memory of outside was being associated with my dad yelling at me and calling me stupid and not having electricity and having to go to the bathroom behind a tree. It sucked.
That's no fun. Speaking of really funny Zoom things, though, I just remembered a thing from about Zoom and video and requiring et cetera. Joshua, you said your kid had to take the driver's what we probably
awareness thing.
Say what we probably called driver's ed back in the day.
Well, this isn't even driver's ed because this isn't at the school. This is like the state requires kids to go through either a 40-hour in-person class or a 4-hour awareness thing. And it all depends on how close to 16 they are.
Weird.
Yeah, Colorado.
But yeah, so I was talking with my brother yesterday, and we were talking about taxes because as one do, and they were talking about they had a problem with their taxes, and so they put together they were going to use like their phone or something like that for the IRS ID system thing, I guess.
ID.me, that video verification thing.
Yeah. But they messed that up somehow, and like their webcam broke, or their phone cam broke, so they couldn't do it anymore on their phone. And so they kind of ended up in this limbo where they were like, I need to do this, but they like couldn't. And so now they have to schedule a Zoom meeting with the IRS to actually go and prove their verify their identity. They were just like, that's just going to be a nightmare, and like I'm going to have to use my he pronoun and et cetera, and all of this bullshit. So it's like, yeah, I was like, well, taxes are fun. Little brother, enjoy capitalism. Woohoo.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So is that what they came up with after? I thought I'd heard they backed down from ID.me after concerns were raised about sending a bunch of sensitive personal information to a third-party company. Is that what they replaced it with?
I think they're still doing the ID.me for something.
I don't know. I had to use it recently for a Colorado unemployment office thing.
Speaking of which,
they're still using that, but there's the U.S. government actually developed their own ID.me competitor, and what everybody was trying to force the IRS to do is stop using a third party, use the one the government developed, because that way at least the information stays within a government agency.
Right.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Speaking of ID got me. I got a cold call from them to wanting to talk to me about a job thingy, something. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I told you about this, Joshua, when we were talking. Yeah. And I've come up with a really good plan or at least I think it's a really good plan for recruiters, because I'm not looking for a job. I like my job. So what I have basically a chain letter, just like a boilerplate response that I send to them, and it's basically like, "Hey, that sounds like a great opportunity." Blah 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 blah. My salary requirements are 400,000 a year. This is the thing. Blah 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 blah. I work completely remote. This is a base salary with other options, etc. Let me know if this sounds within the parameters of what you're looking for. Have a good day.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually have an autoresponder. Well, not an autoresponder, but a triggered response in Gmail that
Nice.
I can just attach. Like, it's basically the boilerplate that just says, "Hey, thanks for reaching out, but I am not looking right now because I'm doing all kinds of cool things, and reach out to me in 2 years."
You just push a button, or do you have to copy paste?
It's push a button. There's a feature inside of it. It's designed for like customer support people to use. There's a doc about it somewhere that I can find if you want me to.
Yeah, my recent job search experience was crazy. I've never felt so popular before in my whole life. I've never had so many emails saying, "Please talk to me." And like when a video goes viral and you see the original creator replied in comments like, "I want to reply to all of you, but it's just too much. I would have to spend all day replying, and I have other things to do." That's how I felt about recruiters. I was getting so many that I was just like, I give up. I can't reply to all these people.
Yep.
And I don't feel special. Like, I'm just like everybody else. I feel like it's just the market.
I feel like
it's partially the market, and it's partially that we actually do things that other people can't do. And when you encounter someone who used to be able to do it, but they can't anymore for various reasons, then we have a guy who is a consultant for my company still, but he had a really bad heart problem. And after the heart surgery and having to stop using caffeine or stimulants completely and a bunch of other things, he just can't do what we do anymore. So I think that it's good for us to, keep the humility of understanding that we aren't really all that special in the big scheme of things, but at the same time, we actually do seem to be able to do something that other people can't do, and that it's not that common.
I guess so. I try to default to being humble, because in the few times in my life where I've drifted more towards being egotistical, I didn't like the person that I was. So I prefer to see myself as no different than everyone else. But I mean, it's true that like I've been in IT 17 years now, which feels like a long number. That's like 3 years away from 20 years.
Yeah, and same. I mean, I've been in IT for over 20 years, for 22 years now. And for me, maintaining humility means understanding that we do have a gift, and we can be humble about the gift while acknowledging that we have gift, and we should use the gift for good, and all that kind of stuff, not just going, well, I'm just like everybody else. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of one take on humility, I guess.
That's what I've talked about this a lot with my therapist, actually, and like she her take on it is, and I agree with this, is basically, hi Freya. Freya is my therapist. She basically like she's like, you don't have to like, broadcast what your skills are and broadcast that you've, how what you do, how long you've been doing it, whatever that kind of thing that, you know, that is like boastful. You don't have to broadcast like that, but you should acknowledge that it's taken you a long time to get where you are, and you've done a lot of work to get where you are. And at least acknowledging that to yourself and to others, like, you know, it doesn't have to be anything special of like, but like exactly what you just said, like both of you just said, is like, you've been in the industry for 17 and 22 years. Like, you've learned stuff since you were in year number 2, right? So it's you've grown and like, I would hope at least, and like that right there in and of itself is a is like something to acknowledge, and it doesn't mean that it has to be boastful. You can be humble about it. It's just, you know, respecting that you have taken that. That's my take on it, and after much discussion with my therapist about, because I definitely used to just be like, yeah, I know, I've done it. I don't know, I'm not that good at what I do. I don't know.
Even if you really are good.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I'm good at this. I don't really, I mean, apparently I am, because I haven't been fired yet. But you know, because like that's that kind of imposter syndrome is like, well, sooner or later they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and they're going to fire me. And there's a whole bunch of weird trauma that I have from past jobs that has led me to that for myself. And I hesitate to call it imposter syndrome, because that, you know, actually is something slightly different from a definition, but it's a form of it, I suppose.
Yeah,
I mean, and then there's all the times that I've been fired too. Go ahead.
In the industry, there's so many different types of software and things in IT that you can't ever possibly know it all, and it grows every year. Like when I was at Walmart on their development tools team, managing their CI, every week somebody wanted a new tool installed on the build servers, like, you know, and the, you know, npm, Python. Then there's like Yarn. Every week there's like a new tool on. What is this? I've never heard of it. Oh, it's brand new, and now we got to have it. And the next week there's a new tool that they just got to have, and it's like, I got to keep up with all this. And then suddenly, like, I thought I knew JavaScript, and now there's React and all this other stuff, and now I don't know JavaScript anymore because I can't keep up with all their frameworks. It's just very kind of humbling.
They need a different version of Yarn for that project. So you're gonna have to make a special Docker container for the build for that, so that you can actually do both versions.
Yeah, you simultaneously have to have multiple versions of tool sets and libraries on the same server. Thank God for Docker.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the interesting things about working on the build and release side, or the infrastructure side in general, and any kind of polyglot environment. You may find yourself in an interesting mix of shallow experience across several different tool sets, and or somewhat deeper experience in others, and bouncing back and forth, whereas a developer on one team might get to settle with one, maybe two for a while, and then maybe switch on a bit of a longer timeline, I think.
Yeah, being T-shaped.
That definitely describes me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of being a T-shaped person with, you know, well, it's more of a weird triangle T, but, you know, lots of depth in a couple of things, a little less depth in other things, but a very broad spectrum of things that you know or could learn quickly.
I hadn't thought of this phrasing before, but I suddenly thought of the phrase comb-shaped, maybe. Not a perfect analogy, but a bunch of deeper experiences in several different areas, maybe often a motley assortment of different areas, but not depth everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what am I good at that I've been doing for the last number of however many years? Like, and what has Joshua been doing? Like, I've been a release engineer, architect. I'm really good at that. I'm a manager right now of a engineering team. I'm pretty good at that. And let's see, I used to be a coder. I was okay at that, Java specifically. And like, I also do a lot of really fun, not for work, like low level C programming for weird devices, which like, oh yeah, and porting software to very esoteric, effed up things like that I'm exceptionally good at. So like, yeah, that's a weird bag of tricks.
I've been almost a coder for maybe something like 12 years. So maybe I should consider accepting myself as a coder at some point.
I mean,
That's part of
if
my
that's what you
problem.
want to do.
That's part of my problem with doing coding interviews, though, is I can never pass one.
So my my take on those and how I've passed the last couple ones that I've done is is I'll just go in and be like, I've worked on like 4 or 5 different languages in the past year because or X years because that's what my jobs have required. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this all in pseudocode, sort of a weird mixture of C, Ruby, etc. And like I'll solve the problem, but I'm not going to write, syntactically correct, this will run code. So if that's a problem, then like this is not meant to be. And that's fine. I'll see you later. Thanks for the time. Because I don't have time to prep for learning, like relearning like Ruby or something, or relearning Go or whatever language it is. It's like I'll relearn it within 3 months, but I'm not going to relearn it in 2 weeks and prep and be all stressed out about it because, yeah.
I found
Like
software
Carl's
development
law of
way
home.
more stressful. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of like Carl's law of home improvement. It's I get good with the programming language right before I'm done with a project and can completely drop it and move on to something else.
Yep, I feel that.
I get good with like a home improvement skill like painting right before I am done with the project, and then I drop it and don't do it again for 5 years.
I got really good at replacing light switches and outlets because I had to do that on my house. And then I finished it and I don't have to do that ever again.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I used to work on that my memories of are rather fuzzy. I always found development. I used to consider myself a developer, but the more I did it, the more stress I had. It almost weirdly, I feel like sysadmin work is less stressful because I can just fix a problem and then everybody's happy. But in my experiences as a developer, there's always some manager breathing down my neck, asking when it's going to be done, asking why it's not done now, and why can't it be done tomorrow? And I'm just like, I've never done this before. This is a new problem. And they're like, well, I need to get you to give me an estimate. It's like, forget this. I'll just fix servers.
To your point, I think, Scott, in at least one of my interviews for an SRE position, the coding challenge was at least something directly related to SRE, and the coding part wasn't too heavy. It was a lot more like, hey, do you understand DNS or HTTP or another commonly used protocol? But I find I have very little interest in learning something that's specifically for an interview because they decide to make that an interview step rather than something directly connected with my job responsibilities, where I feel like I either should know it or I'll happily brush up on the area that's related to it to be able to get through an interview screening.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, like that's why I have customized and because I'm a hiring manager a manager hiring for my team. I've I use some of the sort of, I don't want to say boilerplate interviews, but sort of the ones that already exist where I work. I have a couple of those that I have people do, but I've put together like a specific interview that is specific for this role. The other ones are a little bit more generic that just sort of the like conversational communication and are do you have red flags when you talk to someone about just stuff, interview and whatnot? But I made one specifically for this and took out the coding one because people can learn to code. One of the best people on my team, she did a 6-month boot camp on Ruby on Rails. And then, or no, I'm sorry, it was on like Node.js or something like that. And then she worked maintaining some Ruby on Rails stuff for about 6 months. She has an anthropology degree. And she has learned, she had never touched Go ever. And in that like 1 year of 6 months of boot camp and 6 months of like her first tech job, and then working for me, she has like built out like 3 Go libraries already, and is like killing it. And I'm just like, yeah, people can learn quickly, much better than I can. She knows Go way better than I do at this point in time.
Well, yeah, you learn what you do, and that's really the kind of learning and facility that we look for when we're hiring. It just isn't really easy to test that in a quantifiable way.
I feel like, at least for my type of work, the most important skill or trait is for a person to not be intimidated when they see 100 pages of gibberish, where maybe it's a really confusing log file and there's a lot of it. Maybe it's a gigabyte worth of text file and you have to scroll through it and find the problem, but none of it makes any sense. Some people will just get really scared and they just give up and freak out. And a certain other class of people will recognize that they don't understand it, but keep staring at it and keep scrolling through it until they find something interesting.
Yeah. That's actually one of the interview techniques that I use now that I'm also a hiring manager, is I'll chip someone a link with a whole bunch that's just a text files with a bunch of Python code or whatever in it, and have them pick through and tell me what it's doing. Because if you can do that, then then we have a discussion about how to make it better. And if you can do those things, then it's kind of obvious that you know what you're talking about. And to me, it's a little bit more indicative of what we do every day than starting from zero and writing FizzBuzz.
Yeah, I'm always afraid that I'm going to be asked some obscure language feature that maybe I've used but didn't know the name of or something, and I would like brick on it. But understanding I could understand any language really.
To the long log file point, I've definitely been there, but for some reason it comes to mind, maybe because of a past experience, that I also want to advocate for the flip the table answer, particularly if it's logs generated by excessively poor internal tooling, in that once it gets to a certain point, it's maybe justifiable to say, okay, the way this logs need to be cleaned up, because even if it's possible to sort through this and figure out what's going on, it is so much extra noise to one's mental model and attempt to understand that it doesn't really reflect badly on someone's problem solving, debugging, troubleshooting skills if they take one look at it and say, wow, this is pretty unmanageable looking right there.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate for logs to be that way necessarily. I mean, piping it into a log management tool is probably a good idea too. You can search over it and categorize it and stuff. I just use that as an example of looking at complexity and not getting intimidated.
I like the ask for help option too. I mean, the digging into it is great. Like what I like to call bashing your face on it until you figure it out. Like that's kind of how I learn stuff. But for people who that I've worked with who get really intimidated and kind of flustered by it, like I'm like, at least for my team, I'm just like, ask somebody else on the team, like to just give you somewhere to start. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. They don't have to walk you through a bunch of stuff. Just like have them be like, okay, what are you trying to solve? Okay, cool. Here's a breadcrumb for you. Like go play with this.
That ties into one of the things that I always say about our incident management practice, and incidents are a team sport. They're not something that you're expected to solo.
Unless you work where I worked a while ago.
But yeah, that was an expectation at a job that I hated and worked way too long at.
Same. Hard same.
Yeah, I mean, I stayed there for far too long, and it was outright abusive.
Oh yeah, 7 years at a incredibly toxic workplace environment that I'm still trying to like remove some of the scars from.
My team was fine. Our boss had expectations that were out of line with reality, and the rest of the teams didn't play nice together. And so
you wanted one person to work on an issue at a time?
They wanted, so if your pager went off, and it went off every 3 hours, whether it needed to or not, if your pager went off, you were expected to solve that problem by yourself.
Yeah,
it seems like throwing away like when people get together in a group to figure something out, it's almost like a mesh network. Like it amplifies the brain power. It seems foolish to throw that away.
Oh yeah, but it saves the money. I would.
It's more in this case. It was saving the time of the people who weren't on call, so that they could actually work and produce things the next day. But what it meant was that nobody ever fixed the problems that happened overnight, because it was just that person's responsibility. And
would you do things? People do things where they remediate the issue, but it's going to come back the next time. But as long as it's on the next person's pager, then I don't have to worry about it. I'm good.
It was even a repeat issues, but we couldn't solve them without development teams, and the development teams wouldn't play.
Yeah, I the number of times it was like, well, it's 3 a.m. and I know that Shenzhen's closing, so I'm going to get paged, and Shenzhen's down. Shenzhen can't be down for more than like 5 minutes, because that's literally hundreds of thousands of dollars lost per minute. So
in our case, it was our HL7 streaming receiver was, and anybody who's worked in medical tech just shuddered viscerally. But our HL7 streaming receiver was a Ruby program, and it crashed constantly.
No problem. Just put it in a Docker container and have it auto restart.
It did actually. So at the time, this is pre-Docker. But this is actually somewhat pre-virtual, like virtualization was somewhat new at the time. But it was actually run by daemon tools, but it would hit the point where it would hit the bad data, and then it would crash again. So it would get into a crash loop. So as soon as it detected the crash loop, your pager would go off. But the dev team would never come fix the problem. You were just responsible for going in and deleting the bad data and holding it somewhere else and getting the process flowing again.
I love that. Dev in the middle of the night. I'm just going to open up the database here. Let's see. Let's take these out. Okay.
Delete them until it works
that.
Again.
Yeah, and then let's okay. Cool. This is fine. This is not PII. No problem. No problems here.
You said pre-virtualization. That sparked a memory of it at Walmart. When I was first hired, it was all like bare metal servers, and that's all that existed. And at some point, the server people were coming to developer teams and saying, all right, you really need to be on a VM because this is going to save us a lot of money. And developers were not into it. They were like, it was sort of like talking C programmers into Java. They're like, this is going to be slow. They just didn't trust VMs at all. It was like magic. And at some point they eventually got into it.
Yeah, we couldn't use VMs at that horrible place because 99% of the Java like programs and other programs that were written were it was like half COBOL and half Java. They were all written on Solaris Spark Metal. So you legit like can't I can virtualize it, but they couldn't virtualize it at all as a like project or anything like that. Because they're like, we don't use x86 and all of our stuff is run on T5240s or whatever. Like, cool. Finally getting rid of those Sunfires. All right. Yeah, it's good.
I remember we used to have servers that were so old that SSH wouldn't work on them. They had to be Telnet. And every couple of years, security would come by and be like, you can't have Telnet on the machine. Well, actually, this is HPUX 10.0 and it won't run SSH.
RSH.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of that. Get backdoor root access through little text files.
Actually, porting the Open SSH daemon application to natively to AIX5 was pretty fun because like the one that came with it didn't work. It didn't have all of the modern ciphers, so it was all like version 1 stuff of the it didn't even have the I can't remember, it was years ago, but the what's it curve algorithm that's required, big long numbers curve thing. So had to go and like actually redo that. That was yeah.
Yeah, I remember not being able to log onto servers because they didn't have the right algorithm.
From what I hear about what it's like, I don't miss at all the fact that I entered the industry late enough to miss all of the proprietary Unix flavors that used to kick around. By the time I started, it was overwhelmingly Linux, maybe some FreeBSD and special applications, and Mac OS, and that was it.
Yep. Yeah, that I entered right as Linux and the BSDs were popular and missed most of the mainframe stuff as well. Sun we had a bunch of, but not the other mainframes.
I legit almost bought a T4 off eBay like a month ago, but instead I have this baby that I still need to set up.
What is that?
It's a SGI Octane or Indy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an Indy, and this box here is the actual original monitor, original keyboard, original mouse, and all of the original manuals and stuff like that. So
yeah, we had a bunch of those that we were tearing out of a lab when I was working at Texas A&M.
I loves them. They run IRIX. In case you didn't know that, Illuminate. That's why I brought up that. It's sort of a Unix.
My first job post college was porting C to various platforms for the company's software ran on, which was mostly not really porting. It was mostly just doing the compile. So I'd check out the CVS branch and compile it, and then create a tarball.
CVS, yeah.
I also had to learn all the ins and outs of the ways that NFS worked across all those platforms, and didn't.
Ooh. And it probably was like NFS2 or NFS3 or something disgusting like that.
It was 1999. I don't even remember.
Probably just NFS.
Yeah.
I was a
server was a
PHP
scope.
I was a PHP 3 developer when I first started.
One word, cold fusion.
That's
I never
two words that
touched it.
shouldn't be joined together.
Have y'all ever ran into the NFS silly rename functionality, where when you delete a file, it doesn't really delete it; it just renames it?
Yes. Yeah. NFS 3 bug.
Yeah, I had Jenkins. I was using NFS as the disk for Jenkins, and it would totally freak out whenever it wanted to delete a workspace, because it'd be like, "What are all these .nfs files?" I give up and throw an error.
Didn't you have to run a command so that it would like get rid of the like free the inodes on it, and then it would just disappear?
Not sure.
I don't remember. I know there was a nightmare. There's some nightmarish file system stuff that NFS 3 did.
Mhm.
I'm suddenly reminded of an issue at one of my past jobs where one of our VMs, something was running it out of inodes. And I don't remember for the life of me what it was, but I remember just looking at it and thinking, how do you run out of inodes? I know they're finite, but in any reasonable use I could think of, they're not usually something you'd ever expect to run out of.
Just create millions of tiny files. In
Run
any
Docker.
organization large enough, someone will do the thing that you think is unlikely eventually.
I don't want to blame Jenkins, but I wonder if it was Jenkins.
Yeah, Jenkins. Jenkins had a number. If it was pre 2.0, like in the 1.6 era, before 1.9 ish, Jenkins would do some really, really gross things when it would create a workspace. It would not actually, if it was creating a workspace through a Java channel, which is what the code, when it would use channels to create the workspaces on the remote machine, if you had remote builders, it would not free those because channels don't actually free, they don't actually clean up after themselves. They just close. And the thing on the remote machine still is, this is really boring. I'm sorry. I had to go in and like mess with the code and write a custom version of Jenkins to patch this on Solaris, because channels are bad in Java. Nobody should use them ever. But
Clean up after yourself is one of those kindergarten lessons that all too few software seems to have learned from and come to abide.
When I set up monitoring, inodes and open file handles was one of the first two things that I add, because whenever I've been in many war rooms where people were there hacking away for hours trying to figure it out. And if you ask people what an inode is, a lot of them in the war room wouldn't have any idea. But if you know to check it, I mean, sometimes people will get hung up on that because it's not something that's often checked.
If you run Docker for too long with a what's the thing where you have the root socket, the root socket thingy?
Yeah, so that you can have root access to the host.
Not the file system mapping, but the where you it's not popular anymore, but it used to be like there was a Docker socket that would be how it would communicate with the main server.
So you could, so for controlling Docker off of a remote host?
Yes. Yeah. It was like one of the first ways that it worked before it was early Docker thing, but that would do it. Yeah, if you ran too many Docker containers, you end up running out of file handles because you ran out of sockets. Just like, what?
When you go, there's too many files. When you cd into the directory and type ls-l and it just hangs. It's not like hung broken. It's just taking a long time, and you just stare at it and it doesn't do anything. And you're like, what is going on?
I've seen that.
I gotta go. It's been good.
Take care.
Yep, I gotta run too.